All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to True Correct Loser. I hope you're doing well. So, folks, welcome back to part 2 of the Jason Ravnsborg Interrogation Analysis series. We are at the final hour. For the first time in this chunk, old Ravnsborg has to answer for and defend the pretty much unbelievable story that he's sticking with. Real quick recap how we got here. Right after it happened, when Jason hit and killed Joe with his car, they brought Jason in for questioning. It took an hour. There wasn't really any pushback because they hadn't done an investigation yet. So he tells the story, they write it down, all right, and then they send Jason home. Over the next 3 or so weeks, they do an investigation. You got to think that 3 weeks really crawled by slow for old Jason. He's probably sitting at his house just chewing his knuckle going, oh my God, are they going to charge me? I wonder when the charges are going to come. It's like a lot of anticipation for him. It's like, oh man, am I going to lose my job? I really like the Attorney General pin I get to wear. Oh yeah, also that guy I killed. What about him? So I'm sure he was just sitting at his place, and finally they, like I said, 3 or so weeks, they get the phone data back, they go out to the site where it happened, they recreate everything, and they bring him back in. And then they talk to him again in interrogation for 2 hours. The first hour of this one, they say, Jason, we want to go over the whole thing again, but this time we've gathered some information, so just be careful. If you're going to go with some of the more unbelievable parts, you got to be careful because you may be running into a brick wall of evidence right here in this notebook. You know, they don't say, like, this is the information we got. So it's say, let's go over it again, and they do. From the sleep he got the night before all the way to them finding the body and then him demanding to go take a useless, far too late toxicology test. And then after they did that, Jason and Tim just went back to Jason's office and sat there and twiddled their thumbs. So where we left off in the interrogation is they let him tell his whole story again. He sticks with the same thing. You know, he's acting it out. I think I call him improv troupe Jason when he's doing the act outs. He's going, I set my phone down and I turn the radio off. The amount of times that he turns off the stupid imaginary radio is just ridiculous. He's going, then I turned the radio off, and like there's an off knob, and I turned it, and it's the radio. And then I looked at the speedometer, and what I noticed too is when he says he puts the phone down, when he puts the imaginary phone down, he puts it in the right spot, and the imaginary radio is in the right spot where it would be. But then when he says he looks at the speedometer, he always looks down at his crotch, and he does this motion, like into his crotch. I was looking at, like, what's with the crotch speedometer? The speedometer would be higher than the radio, right? But he always, going here. And then I looked at my speedometer down here. But anyway, so as the first hour is coming to a close, the younger detective is slowly and meticulously unfolding the phone extraction data, being like, these websites, you go on these websites and showing him, look, man, I know you don't remember anything on your phone, and you keep saying, you put it down, you turned off the radio, you looked at your crotch, I put it down. You can almost hear him trying to convince his own soul with some of these. I put the phone down, I turned off the radio. If I could just picture the radio, I turned it off. And so the younger detective is laying out, and it gets to the point where they're doing you were on this website 1 minute before you called 911. Isn't it reasonable? Isn't it reasonable to think maybe you were on your phone? And finally, with that one, Jason goes, yeah, I guess, in a real dejected voice, like, yeah, I guess. And then right when that happens, so now the phone extraction data is out there. He's still going with, I set it down, I turned off the imaginary radio. But as soon as he's like, yeah, I guess, then the older detective, who's been silent, or mostly silent a lot of this time, jumps in with one of the first strategies, and that's the old, Jason, we got a job. People make mistakes, and we're thinking you made one. And so I think that's probably the first time in both the first interrogation and this second one where someone in authority is challenging Jason, saying, you made a mistake. And Jason, of course, he says, quote, I don't remember being on my phone. I set it down. He does the act out again. I set it down. I turned off the radio, and I looked at the crotch speedometer. Best I remember. And he always makes sure to add that I remember being in the road. The best I remember being in the road. But then he goes, but I was worried, how fast does that transmit? And he does this motion. This is like the technology transmit speed. And then with a couple of these, he just has to act like an idiot because as an attorney general, all he does is cases, look at cases. Of course that he knows technology is instant. Come on. But the only thing left to do when you're in this spot is you go, yeah, I didn't know how quickly it transmits, trying to muddle up the narrative. Like I threw my phone, I put my phone down, as you know, I've pantomimed it 64 times already. I put my phone down, but you know how technology is. Sometimes it takes an hour to transmit. I wasn't on my phone. Technology's slow, sluggish technology. You know how it goes. And they don't let that fly. They're like, dude, technology's instant. You're a smart man. And he's going, and he just sticks with I set my phone down. And he's really picturing it now. The radio. It's there. I turned it off. There's the off knob. I turned it. There it is. And they're going, you're a smart man. You know that technology's instant. And then he kind of nips this section in the bud by going, I was not looking at it. I won't say that I was. No. And he slaps his knee. I set it down. I turned the radio off. And I looked at the crotch speedometer. And then they say, you've been kind of called out on this before, right? And he's like, what? And I guess he was tweeting while driving down a canyon. And he's like, I'm a politician. I get called out on everything. And then the older detective hits him with, I've been doing this for 40 years. People make mistakes. She'll tell you. He hits him with, I've been doing this 40 years. And then this section wraps up, I think, a really good tactic by the older gentleman, the older detective, because obviously they have the phone data from the whole night, probably his whole life, but they got the data from the whole night. So he goes, were you making any calls? He starts real slow. Were you making any calls or did you do any text on the way out to the dinner when you didn't kill a guy? And he goes, no, I don't think I was calling or texting anybody. And they go, well, were you looking at anything? And Jason, because he had already just been lumped up with the phone extraction data leading up to this, no, he's just screwed. And the guy goes, were you looking at anything? And Jason goes, probably articles. And it's like, oh, you remember looking at articles on the way there, which is further, more time has passed, and also it was a lot less eventful than when you killed a guy, and you've probably ran when you killed a guy over in your head a million times, but you remember looking at articles then. But on the way home, when we're really trying to figure out what happened, it's like I talked to my dad way back, and then I set my phone down, and I touched the radio, and I'm not sure how fast the technology transmits, but it could be a while. And so that section ends with Jason in a dejected voice just going, probably articles. Sounds like this guy just surfs the web as he drives on the highway. And now he's going to have to probably pay for it in a way. You can't just always be looking down at your phone or your crotch speedometer and expect good things to happen while your car is barreling down the highway. So I think it caught up to him. Okay, and then this section, they move into the glasses. They say how they ease into this one and get him talking about it, because you don't want to just come out and go, hey, did you see the glasses? So how they get into this one is they go, how long did you look for your insurance card? And he goes, I looked for it for a bit. I accidentally got the wrong one. I think the attorney general would have all the ducks in a row, right? But he's like, yeah, I got the wrong one. I brought the sheriff the wrong one. It took forever. And they were like, well, were you in the driver's seat leaning over in the glove box? And he's like, yeah, and it took a while. And he's like, I had to move stuff around. And they said, did you see the glasses? And he goes, I did not. And they go, they were Joe's glasses. And he goes, I was wondering about that. It's like, well, it seemed like you were wondering a lot more about your career and your own freedom and really everything else, because you knew about Joe's glasses at the first interrogation. They asked him, do you wear glasses? And he goes, no. And they go, well, we found glasses in your car. And he goes, well, as you can imagine, he goes, yeah, well, I'm in the military, and the military has sunglasses. And they were just like, all right, well, all right. That's an answer. His military training, taught him that the sun is bright and you need sunglasses. Highly, highly trained people. So he goes, I wondered. They go, those are Joe's glasses. He goes, I wondered about that. And then they go, that means his face came through the windshield. And it's just unbelievable. Jason's response is, I was thinking his face did not come through. Everything is just as good as it possibly can be for Jason. And then this is where they're grilling him. How do you not see the glasses? You're sitting there, and his face came through. That's a lot of time being near the thing you hit to not see it. And this is when he really just starts getting this chant going. He starts going, I didn't see him. I did not see. It was a man until the next day. And the way he's chanting, it's like one of those like self-help tapes when your life's in shambles, but you listen to it and you chant with it and you go, I am in control. I'm in control. I am in control. That's what the tone, he's like, I didn't know it was a human till the next day. Also, the language he used, like, I didn't know it was a human. It's definitely got, like, the psycho-politician thing going. I did not know it was a human until the next day. Yeah, his name's Joe. His name is Joe. I did not know it was a man. I did not know it was a human. All right, and then the glasses one, as he's chanting, I didn't. Then it moves into... They go, one more thing we know is you weren't in the middle of the road. You were on the shoulder. And that for the first time, he doesn't have an answer. He doesn't launch in with, he just hangs his head. And I think he knows the evidence with that one is real hard to argue with. But he goes, once again, I remember being in the road. His memories are getting old at this point. I remember being in the road, but he adds in because he knows what's coming at this point, but he goes, you'll tell me what the evidence shows. And they said the most compelling evidence that you weren't in the middle of the road and something hit you is there's bone scrape on the inside of the rumble bars, the little slits they put to if you fall asleep. There's bone scrape where his car hit Joe, and poor Joe's leg broke. He was walking not in the middle of the road. And now Jason is really starting to just flail, and his voice is starting to get higher. And so he goes, so how did he get further down? Did he ride? And I don't know really what he's talking about at that point. He goes, so how did he get further? Did he ride? And the older detective goes, his face was in your windshield, Jason. Think about that. And then you get to see a politician fake emotion and go, oh my God. And then he goes, doesn't it show that I braked? And another time, just like how fast does technology transmit? It's hard. Just like that, where he kind of has to act stupid. Again, with anti-lock brakes, they're like, well, I know you said you were military trained. They didn't say that. They go, you're military trained, but you have anti-lock brakes on your car, so you don't need to pump them. They do that on their own. He's like, well, I pushed them 3 or 4 times, and they go, yeah, well, anti-lock brakes operate independently. And we have a highly trained military operative attorney general, and when it comes to, they go, well, anti-lock brakes, they just work independently. He just goes, well, I don't understand all that. It's just, whoa, it got real hard all of a sudden. I don't understand all of that. And then they get to the flashlight. So the voice is going up, but how did he? And now they go, did you see his flashlight? And he goes, no. And they go, well, it's hard to miss. And they explain that he dropped the flashlight and that it's a dark night, it's a beacon. And I guess the detectives went out and did some tests where they waited for a dark night, and then one of them, wearing the exact same thing as Joe, walked down the side of the road carrying the same flashlight, and then they had their car drive by and film it. And they're doing it's hard to miss. It's a real hard to miss. That's hard, but he's really sticking firm on that one, because if he argues with the phone thing, all right, that's the difference between operating a vehicle while on your phone and not. But if he admits, or just a little bit admits, that maybe he did see a guy, then the whole thing gets very sinister. So he's slapping his knee again, just going, I did not see it. I did not know it was a man till the next day. He reassures himself with a And then now we're at the part where I think this is the most absurd, ridiculous chunk of an interrogation I've seen in a really long time. And I have this part labeled as "you knew it wasn't a deer." So just to reiterate, they went from the phone to the glasses to you weren't in the middle of the road to the flashlight, and now they go, you maybe knew it wasn't a deer. Maybe you didn't know it was a man, but you knew it wasn't a deer. And the older detective ends up putting a piece of paper on the floor, and they sort of start to recreate where everything was. And Jason keeps going, well, I've never seen the body in relation to the car, because I didn't see it till the next day, and I didn't see it in relation to the car. And they kind of show him finally where everything was. They go, well, you saw the big chunk of debris. The body is pretty close to that big chunk of debris. And he goes, no, the day before. And the reason that the news of them saying the body is just right by the big chunk, the reason that news sent Jason into his high pitch the day before, is because once they put the body there, it's really hard for Jason, because they know that right when it happened, he got out of his car, he looked at his car, he took a picture, he called 911, which we went over, and then he walked towards, on the side of the road, he walked towards the town of Highmore, close enough where he could see the sign, like "Welcome to Highmore," so he could call 911 and say, I'm by Highmore. So they know he walked around the car, stayed on that side, walked close enough to see that sign, and then walked back on that side. The trouble is that Joe Beaver is on that same side, just 2 feet off the road, and also his flashlight is right there too, on in a dark night. So maybe you could explain it. The sheriff and the tow truck driver that just came and were dealing with the car, and they thought it was chalked up as a deer because of the attorney general, maybe they wouldn't have gone over there. But there is no arguing that Jason didn't walk right by Joe Beaver and the flashlight as he's walking towards the Highmore sign. So when they get that all set up, he goes, no, the day before. And so they're going, the questions are just getting absurd. They're going, did you just maybe see something and not pay attention? And he goes, no. And they're going, well, you're looking for a deer and you're walking by, like he's said, I had my cell phone out and I'm looking for a deer. And so they're going, so where were you looking? If you're looking for a deer and you walk past something that's 2 feet from where you are, that's on the ground, wouldn't you find it? And in the most absurd thing in the whole interrogation, Jason, they're like, what? Where were you looking if you weren't looking? And Jason goes, I was scanning. And he's looking at the ceiling with his phone just pointing wildly around. And the detectives don't let him get away with it. And they go, if you were looking for a deer, wouldn't you look on the ground? And they're both acting out like how you would look for something on the ground, looking down with the light as low as possible. They go, wouldn't you look on the ground? And he goes, I looked both. So the highly trained military officer that was looking at his phone, driving on the shoulder, hit and killed a guy that never saw him at any point. Then when he got out of the car, he chalked it up as a deer and then was wandering around looking for the deer in the sky. The old sky deer, people. How could we have missed it? So he's out there stumbling around looking for the sky deer, and then they kind of just sum it all up. They're like, all right, well, you weren't in the middle of the road. You weren't at 10 and 2. You're a good guy, Jason. And he goes, I am a good guy. And they're like, you're not used to being in this type of pickle type of thing. And then the older guy goes, some people would call you a liar. I wouldn't call you a liar, but some people would. And I kind of had the feeling of like, come on, guy. You've been doing it 40 years. Call him a liar. Come on, do it. Just call him a liar. But as they wrap up, he really gets to cling on to I wouldn't have done anything different. I called 911. I got the sheriff out there, to the point where even when the detectives have a little bit of momentum, he says that once, like, I wouldn't do anything different. I called 911. I got the sheriff out there. Both the detectives immediately kind of stop and just write that down, like, well, the sheriff really botched it on this one. How do we? And then that section ends with Jason going, I didn't see him. I didn't know it was a man. I'll swear on a stack of Bibles. That's always wouldn't it be great if it was that easy, Jason? Like, if you were only to swear on one, no way. But since you're willing to swear on a stack, I think that's good enough. Bring in the stack. Then Tim just scuttles in, wheeling the stack. And Jason goes, I didn't know it was a man. And that's it. But he's like, I'll swear on a stack of Bibles. And then Jason always goes, I'm obviously not as observant as I should be. And they don't even answer that. They just go, hold on, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. So they take a break. Jason sits there like this. Then they come back and the younger detective goes, if you were to take a polygraph, Jason, how would you do? And Jason goes, I would pass, except I talked to my guys and they said, since now that you know it was a man, you didn't before, but since now you know it was a man, that could mess things up. And kind of interesting, the younger detective that's been interrogating him is a polygraph examiner, and they're in this, they're in similar areas. So I think that Jason messed up a little bit, because I think he thought he would say, yeah, I talked to my guys, and they said maybe don't do the polygraph. I think he didn't think he was going to get any follow-up questions, but the younger detective goes, oh, who'd you talk to? I know most of your guys up there. And I could be wrong, but it seemed like Jason was like, oh, no, I didn't think he was going to come back with that. And he goes, well, I talked to Tim, and then Tim talked to another guy, and he says the name, and the detective goes, oh, yeah, I know him. And you could tell, I think Jason is like, oh, God. But, yeah, so he goes, I would pass, except I talked to my guys, and... So, but he then ultimately does say that he will take a polygraph, and he makes sure to tell him, I called 911, I got the sheriff down there, I did not see him until the next day. And then I think they can just tell, all right, he's just going to stick to this chanting story, and we don't want to see him turn off the stupid radio anymore. And then Jason, which is just really... gross, is he just goes into like career preservation mode. He's like, so when are you guys going to do this report? Where does the report go? Is the governor going to get it? He even asks, did Joe's toxicology report come back? It's like, come on, man. You didn't even ask about his glasses. But let me see if I got anything else. Yeah, and so it pretty much comes to a close. Jason's wondering how long is it going to take. I think he wants the whole thing to come to an end, and they just flat out tell him, all right, well, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep doing an investigation, and it ends, and as of 2 weeks ago, from filming this video 2 weeks ago, his lawyer pled not guilty to the charges. He has 3 misdemeanors. He didn't make an appearance in court, so it's going to be really interesting how this one plays out. If it will go to trial, I just don't see. I wouldn't want to face the evidence, if I were Jason, I wouldn't want to face this evidence in trial, try to plead down, but it's going to be interesting how this one winds up. I hope you guys are having a great week. Have a great weekend. I'll see you soon. Why? Stiving why? Shabita.